Question, and this is actually a good question. I get this question all the time, and it is a part of the Beginner Boost now since we do 12 weeks of Go development beginning in January. So that's a ways away, but the question still remains, and I can go ahead and answer it now for those of you who want to learn Go. And why wouldn't you? I mean, Go is a very, very highly paid skill right now. I would go so far as to say as Go is the really the best language to learn if you want a good job in enterprise tech, writing middleware and writing commands. And in fact, when we learn to code in the beginner boost in JavaScript and Python at the same time because those are easy interpreted languages. But we pick Go as the enterprise language to learn um, because it's so employable. And I don't want to go into the full justification of Go right now or do the Go versus Rust fight or any of that. Become, I guess, something of a reputation of being a Go hater, Rust hater, but whatever. Mostly, though, I am a Go lover because Go has provided so many things that I needed over the years. And so, what are some projects you could do to get started learning Go? Um, I'm just going to put a plug in for RWX Rob slash awesome dash go is a place you can go. Get it, get it. Um, awesome. Where is it? Awesome dash go. Here it is. This is my kind of landing page for Go. Here's how I suggest you learn it. It's not very popular and it hasn't been updated in a long time. I don't think you should do a bonsai tree anymore. I would replace that with a cobra tree. And if you want to know about cobra and bonsai, there's at least one person who's very shocked by that statement because I made bonsai to counter cobra because cobra is so broken in so many ways, and they've since fixed cobra. Um, Possibly because of the bonsai. So what is your first project? What should your first project be? Let's go back to that. And you can see here I've written many projects for educational purposes. I'm going to try to show you some of them. So um, I wrote, you know, I wrote a basic web interface. Um, but I mean, let's go back to the real issue here. The real issue is what do you enjoy making? I've talked about this a lot, but I don't code for recreation. I code to make things that I want. Whether it's a job, it's money in a job, or it's a title, an automated title changer on Twitch. I don't, or a Zettelkasten, right? I make things that I want to make. So the first criteria is make something you want to make. If you don't want to make it, you're not going to stay with it, particularly if you're doing learning. And that means, I mean, it can be silly. It can be a game. It could be, Go's not very good for gaming, but there's actually some really good Twitch streamers right now. One of whom has set their, I forget the name of the streamer, but they set their avatar, their profile as a gopher, which is kind of interesting because I mean, when I started streaming a Go in 2020, there was literally no one streaming Go on Twitch at all. And now there's quite a few people there that are doing it. So that's a place where you can go get some ideas. There are people doing game development over there and Go, but most of the time when you see Go development, you're going to see it for more boring sorts of things, such as middleware, anything that is an API, a web API. Those get implemented in Go pretty regularly, and or a command. So something you can write for the command line, and that does something that you want to do. So my personal preference is to take anything that I would have put in a shell script, and maybe I have like 4 or 5 dozen shell scripts that do all sorts of different things, and those shell scripts have to be put onto the computer that I'm using. If I'm using another computer or a remote computer, it's not that hard. I made a whole video about how to do this in a few minutes using GitHub. But still, one of the great things you could do is you could make a monolith, and you could put those commands all in a single binary, and then you just copy that binary wherever you want to go. And as a hacker, that really appeals to me because it's basically you can make a rootkit, and you can. It doesn't necessarily just have to be shell stuff. It could be whatever you want. In other words, you can bundle all kinds of stuff in that. In fact, you can bundle shell scripts in it and stuff like that in the resource fork using Go embed. And you can make this monolith that you just ship to any kind of system you want, whether it's an official system you have access to or it's one that you gained access to, and you boom, you can have your entire environment all contained in a single binary. To me, that's a really fun project, right? A less fun project would be because you're basically that's it doesn't take much to motivate me to make tools and utilities for my own personal usage. Hey Matt, but it also that those are things that I like to do, right? So maybe write some Go code that takes an embedded Vim or C file and puts it in the right place and makes a symlink to it. I mean, those are kind of things that I really like to do. Um, However, most people don't like that kind of thing. So I'd say, I already said find something you want to do and do that. The other thing that people really love to do is make um, API integrations. In other words, clients. So and actually, I've done several of these in different languages all the time. For example, to make something that talks to the Twitch API, or talks to the YouTube API, or talks to whatever your favorite API is. Or we actually had somebody code. I don't know if they did in Go, but they coded up a thing that pulled down my GPS coordinates in my IRL live streaming, and they also queried the national database of airlines, and we now have a plane command, exclamation point plane, as in the plane, and that will tell it actually spits out to the chat the when we hear an airplane, we can see exactly where it came from, where it's going, what its type is, and everything's pretty damn cool. Is it practical? Probably not, but I tell you what, Bellum, who made it, had a lot of fun making that one. We're actually thinking about making another command called with the Zillobot that will actually take my GPS coordinate and go look at all the houses in the area, and it will show you the price of the houses in the area, because I bike through areas that have a lot of really affluent, wonderful stuff. And even just making a weather bot that queries the weather. Um, Another really popular utility that everybody, and I encourage people to make on their own, is their own note-taking tool. Note organizing tool. Mine's called Zet. You're welcome to look at mine and see about it. But I do want to actually cite TJ Hollowaychuk here. There's a great video. In fact, I think it's the only known video of TJ Hollowaychuk, who's very famous in the tech world. In fact, so much so there have been conference talks about him possibly being a hive mind instead of an actual person. To date, I don't know. He still has a Twitter account. He publishes all the time, but he's one of the reason he's so famous is because he's one of the most prolific, most educated programmers of all time. He created Express and a bunch of other things. He's completely self-taught. He never spent a day in college doing anything related to coding, and yet he's been one of the most prolific programmers of all time. He has refused to seek out seed capital for anything. He's done everything with his own money. He's never been financially funded. And yet he's extremely prolific. And there's a video of him. I think it's at Brazil ReactCon or JavaScript thing, and there's a bunch of people there. Isaac Schuler there. I mean, a lot of big names that you would know in the JavaScript community. And the interviewer asked everybody in the group, what do you suggest to people who want to learn JavaScript in that case? And they go around the room, and TJ says, rewrite something that already exists. That's his advice. And he says, because he says you'll see that it already exists, and then you can write it. It's like the answer at the back of the book, right? He says because you'll learn a lot because you can look at the code that's there, and who knows, you might end up making a better one. So that was his advice. So if you can't find a project to do, maybe find a project that already exists and attempt to redo it and see what you learn in the way. By the way, if you are going to do that, I mean, there's kind of 2 points to this. One of them is, yes, you can rewrite it, but also you can not rewrite it and just study the code. There are a number of projects out there that are really, really good. And So let me tell you some that I think in Go that are top notch. In fact, I'm not going to give you many examples. There's really only three examples of a code base that is worth looking at every line because it was so eloquently created. And you got to know and I'll tell you actually some code bases to avoid after that. How about that? So the number one best code base, the most eloquent, artistic, brilliant, well designed, well informed, perfect design decisions code I have ever seen in Go is the Go Releaser project. Go Releaser, it's called. And I mean, at every level, this is a person, and I don't know the person's name. I probably should. They have covered every single base. I mean, look at everything they've done there. Ask your questions like why did they do this? What is this internal package about? Why would I ever use Nix in my builder? There's just study it, study it. It's fantastic. It's an absolutely amazing project. The second project that I would suggest you look at is uh, Argo CD. Whether or not you like Argo CD as a thing, the Argo CD team has demonstrated like really supreme mastery of Go, and their entire development practice, how they commit, their use of conventional commit messages. There's a complete elegance and clean code. I mean, in the best sense, not some professor's idea of clean code, but that, like a real sense. It is just absolutely elegant. It's so well done. And the other one is this is a guy who actually I think won an award, the Kind Project, KIND, the Kind Project, which is sort of it was actually developed. Kind was created to make an alternative to stuff like Minikube. In fact, it's still kind of a debate. Do I spin up a cluster using Kind or Minikube when you're doing things? And there are advantages to both of them. Kind was specifically created to test Kubernetes itself, and therefore I think that's one of the reasons it won an award. I don't know the details there. If anybody does, please write that in the comments. So you've got those are the three great projects. And then I'm going to list out a few projects that you absolutely want to avoid like the plague when you're first learning how to code. And some of them are going to be rather surprising. Kubernetes. Kubernetes is one of the worst code bases I have ever seen. It is so disgustingly bad. And I regularly complain about it. I mean, it is it is so bad on so many levels. You're like, Rob, how come it's so bad? You know what? After you've reviewed some of these other good projects, I want you to go look at the Kubernetes project and go look at all the mistakes they made. Another project that's absolutely despicably bad is Hugo. Hugo is the most convoluted, unnecessary, and I'm going to cite TJ again, who is the reason I learned Go is because TJ left Node and went to Go. And if you want to know why, read the very, very, very famous Farewell to Node from TJ Hollowaychuk, written in 2013. That blog rocked the world. Podcasts were making jokes about him and all kinds of stuff and he predicted it, and I followed him. I was a big Node person too, and so I learned Go in 2020 what is it 13 or thereabouts because of TJ Hollowaychuk, because he was so brilliant and such a good coder, and he saw all the advantages. And his comment on Hugo is why? Because Go templates are so phenomenally awesome. There's an hour-long video from Rob Pike talking about how he wrote the code for the templates. It was his biggest pet project within the Go project, was writing the Go template engine. The Go template engine is hands down the best template engine I have ever seen. In 30 years or so, it's by far the best template engine. You can write your own domain-specific languages by just adding a function to a map string functions map, and then you just associate that map, so you can write your own domain specific languages, your own template languages. And that's the basis of TJ's statement. Why Hugo gets all the credit for, I should probably make a video just about this. Hugo gets all the credit for Go templates, and ironically Hugo does a bad job of implementing the templates how it could have done, and it's very bloated and very heavy, and I don't like the project. In fact, so much so that in 2014 I started a project called Hugo Not, which was the opposite of it, and then I abandoned it. Um, I don't even want to talk about the management of the Hugo project. I'm going to avoid that. Let me just say that I would immediately quit if I had to work with the people who manage the Hugo project right now. Most of them. The worst kind of technologists. I don't want anything to do with them. The code base is horrible, and stay away from it. And maybe it was good at one point. Another really bad code base, unfortunately, is Cobra. Cobra got cleaned up a lot recently, but it is really bad. And people are like, oh, surely this is fantastic. It's going to be nice and clean and stuff. No. A project that I really like, but I don't know how good the code base is anything from Glamour, all of the stuff that's in the GitHub command line CL. And by the way, that's actually a project that's kind of in the middle. The GitHub, if you want a good example of how to make a command line tool, a pretty decent example of how to make a command line tool, the GitHub command line tool is pretty good. I think of it as an example of code that some really good graphic UI developers have decided to. Occasionally, you'll get some great JavaScript people who actually convert over to Go for whatever reason, like to make a command or something, and they end up doing some really great stuff because they're thinking of it in terms of like usability and thing. And I would make the argument that that's the entire Glamour project, the charm bracelet and all of that stuff. It's really brilliantly done. And actually, there's another streamer who works over for that company, Bash Bunny, if you know, actually accepted one of the issues that I submitted. They were making tar bombs for some of their code, and I suggested that they fix that. But I had no idea. I had no idea that Bash Bunny was working for Charm. So, and a lot of people code with that. The Primeagent regularly is coding in Go these days, and he's using Charm and all of that stuff. So the GitHub command line tool is a really great example of a thing that you can kind of take apart. I would make sure to look at Kind and that as well, though, because Kind is a more conservative command line tool that does some pretty cool things. Including using the trick for manipulating YAML data without throwing away the data that was already there, which is that's where I learned how to do it. Is I was like studying how they did it in the Kind code base. So that gives you plenty to look at in terms of like what you might want to do for your project. But the most important thing is to find a project that you want to do. I would add to that secondarily that you should probably do something that Go is good for doing. There are so many people that are making games these days in Go, but Go is not designed for writing games. And even though you can get around the garbage collection limitations and stuff like that, it's so much better to write. If you want to do a game, go get the Havok physics engine, that implementation in Go, and make a web-based kind of Agar.io game using a WebSockets API. I mean, Go would be phenomenally awesome at that kind of thing. If that's what you want to do, then you can put that in the back end. Great for building websites. No, I mean Go as a static site generator is actually pretty good. If that's the kind of thing you want to do. Do you want to? I mean, it depends on how you decide. Building a website with Go. Go is not a web language. Go is more of a back-end language, right? I mean, it's like you can't. But people have been saying, including TJ, that you'll be able to run WebSockets at some point. Oh, hey, I'm getting a visit in my YouTube video by my lovely wife, Doris. Hi, bye. Okay, now you're going to be permanently enshrined on YouTube. Headless Doris. Bye. So. So there you go, everybody. You get it? There you go. It's impossible to not make puns about Go. It's like because it's just there. But yeah, when it comes to web, the last thing I'll say about that is, I don't know how to say this without it sounding condescending. There's a lot of programming besides web development. How was that? Was that better? Did I do better? I kid all the time. I actually started my career as a web developer, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I'd encourage you, especially if you're going to learn Go, to think outside the web developer box. Um, and if you're going to do web development in Go, the number one thing you should learn is how to make modern websites. And by modern website, um, I mean for modern websites, Go is really good at implementing the API that gets consumed and displayed to the screen. So if you wanted to do a website, I would suggest creating a full API, web API in Gin specifically. Do it with NetHTTP as well, which is awesome. But eventually, you're going to want Gin, and I mean Gin, not the other ones. The other ones all have really big glaring problems, and I've done a video about that. But Gin is still the oldest and the most mature and the easiest to use, and etc. So what I would do is I would implement your website as an API, and I would think about designing your website as an API. So let's say you're going to do a blog, right? If you're going to write your own blog engine, which everybody does all the time, and you don't want it to be static site generated. You want it to be more of a, I mean, there's static site generation, right? Which Hugo's already doing. You can do your own static site generation. That's actually a fun project. Write your own static website generator that uses Go templates and maybe uses TJ's library. TJ didn't, rather than make a static site generator, which he has done in the past, he made a library that helps you use templates more efficiently. But just use templates yourself, and you can make your own, static site generator. In fact, we do that. I have a CV generator in artifactsrob/CV that does that very thing. If you want to go look at that, let me go show you really quick. So I don't know how much of this we're going to be able to do when we do the boost. I'm still trying to decide how much time we're going to have for this. So if you go to CV, I adopted a sort of, so I have this YAML file. This is actually kind of a fun project if you want to make an automatic resume generator. So I have the data.yaml. So here's all the data for my resume, my CV. And then I have, what is this right here? And I have the resumes that get generated, and I have the templates in here. And here's all my templates, and the fonts and everything. And then here's my generator. So I actually run my generator. Gen.go is can be run as a script, which normally you wouldn't do, obviously. And it's using a V2. I need to use V3, but what it does is it parses the data file, and it generates a web page out of it. And once it generates the web page, then you can it will actually, I can print a PDF by doing print as PDF when I go view the web page, and then you get this nice happy. I'm sorry for the flashbang. You get this nice happy thing, and so then you can actually change. You can change the different aspects of it. In fact, at one point we were going to have it generate a web page where you had you had buttons, and you could click off the things you didn't want to see, and then those things wouldn't be printed anymore. This is a really fun project. There are attempts at making a resume, YAML data format, and I found them to be very lacking. And so it doesn't take very much to maintain all your data for your resume in this nice happy way. I actually did this when I was getting rid of my LinkedIn, because I wanted to get all this data out, and I had to copy and paste it all by hand because I didn't have access to the API, because only people who pay to mine the data from LinkedIn get access to that. We made a whole video about that. So that's actually a really fun project. Who knows? It might actually make it exciting for you to write your like I put my keywords down there. It's totally changed since then. So I mean, these are some fun ways. I mean, there's these are obviously not the only ways. There's lots of fun things. The most important thing is do something you want to do, and if you want it to be web related, I strongly suggest that you look at Go templates and learn the new 1.22 NetHTTP. Make absolutely sure that you learn 1.22 because it has the new routed, wildcards in NetHTTP and stuff like that if you're going to do any kind of web thing. Not to mention lots and lots of other great stuff. That's the first implementation. It's the first release of Go that's now the standard library is now converting over to use generics, which came in like 1.18 but weren't really implemented in the standard library at Rob Pike's request. And so that's kind of where we are with that. I'm going to go ahead and end that video now. Hopefully that's given you lots of food for thought. Please come by and visit us on Twitch or in the Discord. There's lots of people there that are working, that are professionally employed, writing Go code, myself included, and it's really fun. So we'd love to talk to you about it.